Hey everybody, Charlie Stevens here. Thank you so much for joining me for another guitar lesson. Alright, in this lesson I'd like to teach you about eighth notes. So eighth notes are a very important concept musically. So it can be a little bit challenging to understand at first, so I wanted to wait until we had lots of playing experience under our fingers with other things on the guitar. But we're getting to a point where we won't really be able to progress very much if we don't learn this concept of eighth notes because it's such an important concept in music. So, eighth notes are called eighth notes because we can fit 8 of them into a normal measure, which is in 4/4. So common time is 4 beats per measure. So if we were to fit 8 in that measure, that means we're going to take each beat and split it in half. Okay? So essentially, eighth notes are faster than quarter notes. It takes 2 eighth notes to equal 1 quarter note. In the time it takes to play 1 quarter note, we could also play 2 eighth notes. Okay? I consider this a very important concept because it's sort of our normal rate of speed, I believe, in music. So in speech, we might say something like blah, 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 blah. Or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. Right? It would be, shorter things punctuated by longer notes at the end of our sentences. Sometimes those longer notes really bring out the important parts. So this is really important to have variety as well, and not just it to be constant eighth notes. But there are more styles of music that feature constant streams of eighth notes with very few quarter notes in there, more so than there are styles that are mostly quarter notes with a few eighth notes in there, I think. That's my personal opinion. I think eighth notes are just very important for getting the sound right. It'd be sort of like if you were talking to somebody and they said, "Hello, how are you?" You'd be like, what is wrong with this guy? So that's kind of how it will sound in your music if you're playing only quarter notes. So this is a super important concept. Okay, so first we're going to learn how to count eighth notes, and then we're going to learn how to read them, and then we're going to learn how to play them on our guitar. Okay? So to count eighth notes, as I mentioned, we can fit 8 into a measure, but it's a measure of 4/4. So we don't want to count to 8 because that will throw off the existing structure that we have. Usually we count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are still going to be in the same place. We call those the beats. And where the eighth notes fall, we sometimes call that the offbeat, because it's not on one of the beats, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? So, 1, 2, we usually use the word and in between these. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. You see what I'm doing? So 1, 2, 3, 4, those are always in the same place, regardless of if I add the ands or not. That stays consistent. And the ands would be halfway between these beats, right? So that's why I'm going to do this as a little visual aid up here. We go down, and then halfway before we get down again, we can hit up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? So this is a great visual aid to really lock this in because it really syncs up to what we do with our pick. And this is true with strumming and picking single notes. And this is something called alternate picking, where we'll go down, up, down, up, down, up. And we'll really lock that in. So all of the beats will get a down, and the ands, the things between the beats, we'll do with an upstroke. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Okay, so if we're going, those are quarter notes with all downs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that when I strike the string, my pick has to move back up past the string in order to come back and do another down. So this is why the upstroke is really beneficial, because I basically can play twice as fast without moving my pick twice as fast by simply letting the pick catch the string on the way back up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Without moving my hand faster, I just let my pick catch the string on the way up, okay? This is what alternate picking is all about. I like to tap my foot, usually my right foot, because that's the same side of my body that I use for my picking hand, is also my right hand. And I really like to line this whole side of my body up on that beat. When my foot goes down, I'm gonna pretend this is my foot so you can see it, tapping a beat, 2, 3, 4. I pretend there's a string connected to my pick and my foot. So when my foot goes down, my pick goes down. When my foot comes back up, I catch the string again on the and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? This is hugely important to music. If you get the hang of this, it will really help. There are other styles of picking that are not alternate picking, but I personally consider this the most important one. You might want to branch out and explore some others as well, but even if you don't, if you just want one pick style, this is probably it. Some of the other ones can be advantageous for certain things, but they also tend to fall short for certain things. They have their sort of, advantages and disadvantages, and that's probably true with this one. There's definitely things that perhaps sweep picking and economy picking would be more advantageous than strict alternate picking, but strict alternate picking is pretty good. If I had to pick one that I said this is like the one that I'm going to use, it would definitely be this one because it's the most versatile, in my opinion. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and try this. We're going to play a measure of eighth notes on each one of our open strings while we tap our foot and count aloud, okay? So we're going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and change strings, okay? Starting on high E, traveling all the way to low E, one measure each. So we're essentially picking 8 times on each string, right? But we're going to say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, hope that makes sense. Please play along with me. This is example number 1. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 Okay, that was example number 1. Okay, so you can practice this all you want. I do this with the metronome. I'll share a video where we go over practice habits and with the metronome, and this is on my list of things that I do nearly daily, is kind of alternate picking with the metronome in this way to get really comfortable with the downbeats using downstrokes, the upbeats using upstrokes. And this really helps because there are certain times where it can be a little confusing when we're playing music, and this gives us an anchor to really latch into. We can say, well, is it on a beat or is it on an upbeat? And if it's on a beat, we can use a down. If it's on an upbeat, we can use an up. Sometimes that's all I need to do. I look at a difficult passage of music and I go, oh, well, it starts on the and, I better start with an up. And maybe I wouldn't have realized that before. Maybe I would have said, oh, the passage starts here, I'll just start playing, and I would naturally maybe start with a down. And maybe I'm wondering why things are a little turned around. But if I realize, hey, that actually starts on the upbeat, I can start with an up pick, and then everything will lock into this pattern of down, up, and that works really nicely. Now, there is also a study called reverse alternate picking, where we would turn this on its head and we would put the downbeats on ups and vice versa. If you're new to this, I would not recommend doing that. I recently started experimenting with that just why not, to check it out, because I've been doing this alternate picking for years, right? So again, it's nothing in music is like ultimate truths, like this is the only way to do things, but this is the best way to do things. Reverse alternate picking goes against gravity. This goes with gravity, so much more logical. So I really recommend making alternate picking your starting point, and if you decide to branch out and try other methods as well, great. But for now, let's do alternate. Okay, so now I'd like to do a C major scale, And previously we've played those all with quarter notes, but really we would play them with eighth notes. Most likely it would sound a little more musical if we play them with eighth notes. So in example number 2, we're going to do a 1-octave C major scale. Please watch the video on how to play that if you haven't learned that one yet. We have a video on this channel you can check out, and then you'll be ready to play example number 2 with us. So we're just going to go straight up in eighth notes. I'll demonstrate before I have you join me. Okay, so I'm going to double up that high C note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we end on an and. Okay, let's try that together. Consistent eighth notes, doubling the high C. Example number 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so that makes sense. It's a great exercise for practicing alternate picking. We run into some problems here because 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I get to the starting note on the and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. A little bit weird. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. A little bit weird. We get to where we're going on the and of beat 4 and not on the beginning of a strong beat, not on beat 1. So jazz people figured this out and they would add in one extra note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. That's the bebop scale. So that's the scale that exists to solve this little problem that we get, that if we want to play eighth notes up a scale, well, there are eighth notes in each measure, but there are only 7 notes in our scale. So they added in an eighth note in the bebop scale, and that fixed a rhythmic problem. That's more of an advanced concept, and we'll probably touch on that at some point down the road. Don't really want you to worry about that, but I just wanted to explain that there's sort of this rhythmic issue that happens between our 7-note scale and our eighth note pattern. And that's one way that they solved it. I've proposed a different way to solve it for today, though. We're going to put quarter notes on the C notes, okay? And that will solve the issue as well. That will turn out to be like this. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Okay? So that's how we're going to do it today. I think that sounds musical, and we've done this on this channel also. If you've been checking out some of the other lessons we've done on 2-octave scales, in some of those examples we've hung out on the tonic, right? And made that one a little bit longer so we could kind of hear that that was an important note, right? So it's a great thing to do for that, to really hear where the tonic is and know that this isn't just a random group of notes and a pattern that my fingers follow, but there's a certain order to it. You know, there are certain notes that are really important in specifically the tonic, the note C in this case. So by making that one a little longer, we add a little more weight to it, we make it sound a little more important so we can hear the scale better, but it also fixes this problem with the rhythm that we encountered, okay? So why don't we try that one together? Here we go. Example number 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. One more time on that one, please. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1. Okay, so when we're reading eighth notes, they look just like quarter notes, but they have little flags on them. So if we see an eighth note all by itself, it will get this little flag on there, so we know that it's not as big as a quarter note, basically. And if there's 2 of these eighth notes, we take their flags and tie them together, and it forms this little beam here. Okay, so that's what we're seeing. We're only seeing those kind in our examples because for us to only have 1 eighth note, that would make something else uneven. and we would need a different symbol for that, which we're not going to learn about in this video. So don't worry too much about the single eighth notes. We'll talk about that when we get to the dotted quarter notes, and we'll check those out again. But basically it's these beams. They're beamed together to show that they're kind of like one quarter note that's like stretched out and still I don't know, however you want to think about it, but that's kind of how I think about it. Like we had one and they separated, but they're still kind of joined to the head to show that they're really just still one beat, okay? Yeah, but like I said, very important to understand eighth notes in terms of feeling it for all sorts of musical reasons. Great practice to get into this alternate picking thing, which I promise, if this is something that's new to you, this will completely change your playing. You get really comfortable with putting the downs on the downbeats and the upstrokes on the upbeats, and all of a sudden, a lot of things will start to make a lot more sense. Things that were previously difficult will start to become easier, I hope. Okay? So definitely practice this very carefully, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson where we will learn a whole lot more. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these videos, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon. Thanks again.